Alliance people here.
Hello. We were just on with Rita and Stan and Mike, so I know they're getting ready to join. Thank you for being with us. I know I'm sure you'll introduce yourself, but we're looking forward to today's discussion.
We're happy to be here.
What's that?
We're happy to be here.
It's kind of a neat time to be doing this because it's right at the end of the grant season, and having gone through that, and we're even talking for the next year. What we typically do is take the off-year grant and go deeper in terms of learning and understanding around need areas, etc. So this will be a great setup for that.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
I miss the gatherings at Youth Eastside Service that we used to have on the last Wednesdays. Boy, that seems like decades ago now.
I know, right? It's been forever. Forever. It either feels like forever or just yesterday, right?
Yeah,
exactly. It's weird. It is really weird.
Very weird.
Hey, Terry, you're sideways.
I know. Trying to fix it.
Who knows? Maybe he's like literally sitting, at home like that. How do we know?
Well, like I said, it's not the first time I've been sideways. So.
So what's the vibe out there? How are, when you think about your guys' clients, etc. I'm pretty involved in the Issaquah Food and Clothing Bank for a bunch of years on the board, etc. And it's just such an unsettled time to even know what you can do to best serve them, our clients sometimes. What are you guys finding?
Yeah, exactly. It's challenging. I think we're going to talk about some of that too.
Good.
Right,
Yeah.
We got that in there. We've got some of that in there in our presentation.
Good.
Don't steal all their thunder.
That's
now.
right. Yeah. Jumping in too quickly. And have we heard, Stan, I haven't, there's, hey, Nishina, how are you?
I'm fine, how are you?
Good, how are you? Good. Rita?
Hello.
Hello.
Jody. Any word from Jody?
Yes, Jody has a stomach bug and she's not coming today.
Bummer.
I know.
Big bummer.
Okay, well, then that's it, because CJ's resigned, so. And it's 6:30. Is everybody ready?
Yeah.
Oh.
All right. I'd like to call the meeting to order, 6:30, November the 18th. Do I need to read this meeting information, Rita, Mike? The coronavirus warning, blah, blah, blah.
No, I think you're fine.
Good. I'd like to have roll call. Rita, would you call the roll, please?
Of course. Sorry. Chair Gunno?
Here.
Deputy Chair Ellis?
Here.
Commissioner Hall?
Here.
Commissioner Miro?
Here.
And Commissioner Bottenberg?
Here.
Great. We have a majority. We're good to go. I'd like to, Mike, do you have a flag?
Yes, I do. It should be coming up on the screen here.
Thank you. Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Happy delayed Veterans Day, by the way, Stan.
Thank you, Tom. I appreciate it. It was interesting. I had a chance to reflect on not just my service, but my two brothers and my dad and my daughter and my son-in-law, and now my grandson's in the Army.
Wow.
So, yeah. Interesting.
Proud of, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's doing okay. Sorry he picked the Army. You know, the Air Force would have been a better choice, but I gotta accept it. Everybody have a chance to look at the agenda?
Yep.
Yes.
Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Great. Did everybody have a chance to look at the minutes from October the 14th?
Yep.
Are there any corrections, deletions, additions? I wasn't at the meeting, so you guys know more than I do.
It looks fine. The only question, and this is more procedural, CJ had resigned prior to the meeting. So would he be considered absent, or is he no longer a commissioner? Not a big deal to me either way, but from a procedural standpoint.
Gone, obviously.
We our agenda software in which we create these minutes doesn't have an option to show resigned. So for the time being, the only option is to show him as absent.
Okay, I love it.
Okay,
I move
That'll
to
work.
accept.
I second.
all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Boy, this is breezing right along. Good. Now's an opportunity for public comment. Mike, you said earlier that we didn't have any written comment. Has anybody logged on and showed interest? I don't see anybody. Do you?
Not that I can see.
Okay. I will close public comment. And now we'll go right into our new business. I would like to welcome the Alliance of Eastside Agencies. You guys are going to enlighten us on life, right? And tell us where everybody needs help and what we're doing that's good. So I turn it over to you. Rather than me mess up names, you guys just introduce yourselves.
Great, we're happy to. I'm going to share, we have a PowerPoint, so I'm going to share that and let's hope that works.
Perfect.
Can everybody see it?
Yes.
Yes,
Yep.
thank you.
Fantastic. So far, so good, right? All
Step
right.
one.
So we are super excited to be here. And introductions is our first part, so that's perfect. I am Rochelle Clayton-Strunk. I'm the co-chair of the Alliance of Eastside Agencies, and I'm also a programs director for Encompass. I think many of you know who Encompass is, but just really quickly, we are an early learning and pediatric therapy program that serves the Issaquah, Snoqualmie Valley, Riverview, and some of Lake Washington school districts.
Hi, I'm Helen Banks Roughton. I am the co-chair of Alliance of Eastside Agencies, and in my other job, I'm the Director of Development and Community Relations for EBC, Eastside Baby Corner. And again, like Encompass, I'm sure that you are familiar with Eastside Baby Corner, has great supporters of us for many years. And we are here to keep build resilient children's and stronger communities by providing children birth through age 12 with all of the tangible goods they need to be happy, healthy, and thriving.
And my name is Helene Wenting. I'm the vice chair of AEA, and I'll have a silent role tonight, but I'll be the cheering section.
All right.
I also, in my daytime, I'm the director of advancement for community homes. We provide housing and housing education for adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So thank you so much for letting us be here tonight.
I'd like to thank you in advance for being here. We're really looking forward to your presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you. We were Very excited for the invitation. And as you've heard, we are each employed by a local Eastside Human Service organization. And we know that you hear from individual organizations throughout the year. But tonight we are here as Alliance of Eastside Agency representatives. So we're hoping to give you a global perspective on Eastside Human Services, our system, our challenges, as well as our opportunities. Let's see. I can't get my, sorry. There we go. Sorry about that. All right. So here's a map of our coverage area. As you can see, we are looking at the dark yellow. So we serve some of the larger Eastside cities, which is the East Urban area. And we also represent organizations that are further east. So that's including the Carnation, North Bend, Duval, and Snoqualmie areas, as you can see here. And our mission is to build healthy communities in East King County through a strong human service network by providing a strong voice for Eastside Health and Human Services and by promoting organizational excellence among providers. AEA, which I will refer to now as AEA instead of Alliance of Eastside Agencies, a little easier, is the only organization that focuses on the provider voice. And we do that representing small to large agencies, and there isn't another network or organization that does what we do. We recognize that human service providers have a finger on the pulse of the needs of the communities, especially the most vulnerable. And we also believe and know actually strongly that a strong human service sector is critical to healthy communities. And we accomplish that in three bold ways. The first is we foster strong partnerships. And we do that through connections to other networks like the Eastside Human Service Forum or the King County Alliance, as well as local city staff specifically. We build relationships with each other as well. Again, an important partnership that we have. And the next way is through strengthening organizational capacity. The AEA holds approximately 7 to 8 pivot point discussions each year, and pivot point discussions are really based in relevant topics that bring our agencies together to learn and explore from an expert, but also from each other. We know there's a lot of value in what we experience and what we know, and we can share with one another. One example that we had last spring, and COVID has really turned us upside down a bit, but we are still providing services. We had a presentation from Seattle King County Public Health, and they provided some vital information about the safety restrictions then, as well as the virus itself. But it was really important for us as AEA to allow some time for agencies to share how they were dealing, how they were modifying, adjusting to service delivery. The next way that we do that is educating the community. And we see our community in various ways. One is the community of providers, so our organizations that are serving the community, and then also the community at large. And we do this through monthly newsletters, social media, and now presentations like this, potentially more of these to other human service commissions. All right. Oh, wait. I went too fast. Okay, so AEA is a member agency, and we were founded in the late 90s. So we've got over 20 years of doing this work. We have representation throughout the human service sector with about 30 between, it ranges depending on the year, from 30 to 40 member agencies. The member agencies range from organizations that serve the entire age span, so babies to the elderly. And they do that through a variety of ways, supporting residents on issues of housing and homelessness, food, tangible supports, disabilities, education, developmental therapies, behavioral health, job placement and support, transportation, and more. And then here are just a few of our member benefits. As a member, we have some specific member benefits, but we also open a lot of these opportunities to the larger community because the educating the community is important. We don't just limit our pivot point discussions, for example, just to member organizations. We want others to attend because we are really trying to reach broader than just us. And I think you can see, we also partner with some other organizations to help support advocacy efforts, which is a little different than some of the other things. And we find that that's another partnership organization or partnership opportunity for us. Let's see. So this is our board of directors. And you can see that we have a variety of pretty well-known organizations on our board, as well as some lesser or smaller organizations on our board. And as you can see, we have 3 of our officers here today with you. We're super excited to do this.
Wow.
And we also, the one thing in terms of the structure of our board and our organization is that we have specific seats available for city staff. And you can see Rita's on there. And these are ex officio members that don't have voting power, but they do provide some context to us. And then we are also able to present and provide some deeper understanding of our challenges, of the successes, and our communities. We are a working board with a small amount of admin support from the Together Center, who is our fiscal agent. But every event, every presentation, every representation is coordinated and delivered by a board member. And let's see. Yeah, so that is, we wanted to spend a little bit of time up front to talk about AEA as an organization, and then we will shift into more the global understanding of human services on the East Side. Do you have any questions before I move on to that about AEA?
I'm sure I'll have lots of questions as we go along. It'd be interesting as we go along, and this might be as you move into it, but how do you guys measure success? What do you hope to achieve? That kind of stuff would be really cool to help us better understand, what you're about.
Sure. I think as AEA, our success comes from the partnerships. A lot of it's anecdotal in terms of what we've seen over the years around the innovation that has occurred by partnering, by networking, by shifting. We get a lot of our organizations say that this is, and I actually say this from my point of view, is that AEA is the only place where I say it's my tribe. It's the only place where people truly understand the challenges, the success, how rewarding it is, but also how difficult it is to work at a local nonprofit, especially on the East Side. We do surveys occasionally, so that's more of that technical piece around success. But in general, it is the on the boots, what do we see change and how we support our communities better. Cool. Helen or Helene, do you have anything to add around that?
I'll go ahead and just add, I represent a smaller organization, but I can honestly say when we joined AEA, gosh, 4 or 5 years ago now, it really helped us keep moving forward and growing as an organization. So again, that's anecdotal. I think we've actually talked about doing some surveys for 2021, but we really do rely on the membership to, let us know what their needs are. And then what we try to do is make sure that our pivot points reflect the needs of the members.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions about AEA specifically? I mean, and there will be an opportunity at the end too, so don't feel obligated to have one now.
So, like, what type of advocacy do you do? Is it to influence legislation at the state level or the more local level?
Where our advocacy is not necessarily direct as an organization. We support advocacy efforts. So there are organizations that have legislative agendas, for instance. We don't have our own legislative agenda. However, we have actually had a pivot point discussion where we are helping bring and convene providers for those that want to do advocacy efforts so that they can get the voice of the provider, but also our community through providers. So we support advocacy efforts. We're not doing direct advocacy, but we realize also that it's a really important piece of showing the needs of the community.
Great. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so there will be an opportunity at the end for whatever questions you have. I'm going to move to human service in East King County. Okay, so as we all have experienced, this has been a challenging year, right? For us individually, for our community, for our businesses, and also and primarily those that we serve. Human service staff are trying hard to manage their own individual impact in this while serving the community. And I'm sure all of you are aware of secondary trauma, which is a very real part of everyday circumstances when you work for a social service organization. And, you know, staff hear traumatic stories from individuals and families, and there's an impact on them emotionally. And it's really important that we're aware of that for staff. But this year, it is like a double whammy, or maybe triple whammy. It's I don't know how many, but families have increased needs, both emotionally and tangibly, as do our staff. And most staff have never, I mean, when I talk to staff in my organization, but outside of my organization, have never worked harder in our life, and they work hard. With the it's necessary to adapt and modify services as safely as we can, but we can't stop programming. That has not been an option. And in some ways, we've had to increase our support to those that we serve throughout our sector. And at the same time, staff are also worried about themselves and their own families. They may have children that are doing remote learning, very difficult. They may have a spouse that's been laid off. They're worried about staying healthy, and you know, so much more. This year, the issues in East King County and beyond, right, have compounded, and we're just doing our best to keep afloat. Human services in general is a system. Sometimes it can feel like each individual organization is siloed, doing their own work for a specific population. But it really is a system. We are highly connected, we are supportive, and we are innovative as a sector. And we recognize that we need each other, because often when a resident has a need, they may have multiple needs. So for us to do the best we can to serve them, we need to be connected. And AEA provides that. We provide those connections with smaller organizations, with other colleagues. We also are an inclusive of both small, medium, and large organizations to ensure that we have an equal voice that highlights the individual needs that each agency brings to our community. And the human service or nonprofit sector, it is a puzzle that is closely connected, both organically, but also through organizations like AEA. And I use this graphic to show the different components. It's a puzzle, and I see it even though I don't have a Jenga graphic. It is a Jenga puzzle, right? If you remove any one piece, it can topple really quickly. And it includes, staff, board of directors, foundations, government, clients, volunteers, donors, partners, businesses, and community. And I found a quote that was perfect, and it comes from Joining Vision and Action Blog, and it states that because of which is us, because of our organizational structure and frequent resource constraints, nonprofits need to engage community and collaborate with their constituents to achieve their bottom line in creating social change. This year, there's been an added piece of COVID-19 to this, and because of our interconnectedness, our ability to be nimble, it hasn't toppled, right? We've had strong support in the community, especially East Side, and it hasn't toppled. That being said, we are on shaky ground, right? That if one of those pieces is left in normal times, it's an issue. But we have an added little piece of the Jenga puzzle with COVID-19 too. So I want to share our video. I'm going to try to do this, so bear with me. This is a really good video as we move into some of the specific challenges. I'm going to try to see if I'm going to unshare this, and then I'm going to try to share the video.
And I think I'll just add, while Rochelle is working on that, the Evans School actually published a COVID-19 nonprofit study today. And in human services in Washington, there's been a 28% increase in service need without an increase in funding. So that was a report that literally was shared by 501 Commons today, and I can certainly make sure that Rita has a copy of that. But it's important information.
It was basically general needs all put together. What was the 28%?
Specifically for human services.
Human services in total. Yeah, that'd be cool. Anything you can send to Rita. We're always looking for trying to understand what's happening out there, so that would be super helpful.
You bet.
So it's not coming up on what I can share. I'm wondering if I press the link, if it will work. Do you think that will work? Should I try that?
Give it a go. And worst case, we can try and see what we can do on our end.
Okay.
Helene, is the study Washington State focused, or is it a national study?
I believe it's Washington State focused. It literally was in my inbox about 15 minutes before this meeting, but I believe it was specific to Washington.
Okay.
Okay, so I apologize. I have never done a video. I've done presentations, but this is a new piece, but
Hey, Rochelle, you know what?
Yes.
If you add the link to the chat box, we can click on it then.
You know what? I've sent the link to Mike, so Mike's going to be able to bring it up because he's tech wizard.
I might be able to bring it up. Let me give it a shot here.
It's a lot of pressure there, Mike.
Mike, if you posted it on the chat in the chat box, you could click on it. Then we could all click on it.
The
link.
Let's try.
Okay.
Give me 1 second.
I would ask if we open it individually, we mute our microphone. Otherwise, it's going to overplay each other.
That's true.
Yeah. I think it'll be nice if we can try and watch it together, but we'll see.
True.
You know.
Yeah, and I can try to share. There is a link. The problem is that when Teams is also in my search bar, so it's not letting me go to the other tabs.
It doesn't seem to want to let me do this.
Mike, can I just try it through the PowerPoint and see if it'll bring it up?
Sure, let's give that a shot.
Let's give it a shot, because I do have that handy. We'll start. Oops, excuse me while I scroll in through really fast. Okay, here we go. All right, can you see that?
Yes.
Okay, my concern is the sound, so hopefully you'll be able to hear it as well.
Yes, I think you'll be able to. Yeah.
I'm still seeing the PowerPoint. I don't know if everyone else is seeing the video.
No.
As you know, yeah, it's the PowerPoint. It's a link. So
Yeah, all I see is the link.
Oh, I did press on it. Let me unshare and oh, I'm sorry, everybody.
Rochelle, you may have to, if you control, click on that. It opens through the PowerPoint. I opened it earlier through the PowerPoint, but you're just going to have to really click on the link, and you may have to do a control, press control and click at the same time.
Press control and
press control while you click with your mouse on the link.
okay, I do have it up on my computer. That's the challenge. It's just not showing
okay.
everybody else.
Okay.
Here, I have an idea. I'm going to try one more thing. Okay. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, let's see if this will work. Because that's it.
you know, Rochelle, let me see if I can do it if it's not working your end. I've got quick tech support here. Hold on.
Okay. Do you want me?
It's her.
I can stop
The family
sharing.
member or?
Yes, Rita has her high school tech support.
Oh yeah.
Rita, your mic is blocked. I don't know if the speaker's blocked.
Yeah, you are on mute, Rita. So maybe.
Okay, hold on. We'll start again. Hold on. Can you see?
No, we cannot hear anything.
We can see it, but we can't hear it.
You got to read.
Okay, hold on. Let's try now.
Check your computer mic, like the volume button, whether that's on.
On the video where the speaker is at.
Thank you for your patience, everyone. It is a good video, I think.
That's
Better
good.
be
We're
worth it,
here.
right?
The anticipation's building.
I know.
No,
it'll be fine.
Now, Rita mentioned this was your guys' first time doing it, so we're super patient and.
So apparently I am unable to do it from my computer. So I am thinking, do we want to paste it into the chat and we all put ourselves on mute and watch it individually?
Yeah, I think
so.
I think
good idea, Nishina. Old school's always the best. So let's see about, so if we can, let's have a look. Let me see very quickly. About putting it in the chat function, show conversation. Let me just paste this. Okay. Right, do you guys all have that? Okay, so does everyone see that link? So everyone mute yourselves, and when I'm going to count you down to 1, and when I say 1, you're going to play 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, action.
Is everyone back?
Yes. I need to bring Terry back
Hey.
Yeah. I'm here.
in. All right.
Great.
Looks like everybody's here.
I'm here somewhere.
I hope. What did you think of that video? I'd love to hear just some popcorn thoughts about what you saw in the video.
I think it's very true. It's an issue that we were talking about when we were doing the grant review process, as far as there are needs that service providers have that aren't always addressed in the grant request. For example, the pizza oven that went out, which is like, we need to update our computers, but we didn't put that in the grant request. Well, now we have to find the funding somewhere, and running into the situation of, well, we funded them last year, we're not going to fund them this year. They can find money somewhere else. We have to be careful of that. And I think we were very conscious when we did our review.
Great. Well, that's actually, we're going to talk about those kind of challenges, and the video in many ways sums it up. And I don't know if you guys got scrolled to the end, you might have noticed that Vu was acknowledged in there, and I know you guys had done a presentation with Vu, and of course he's a leading voice in trying to bring attention to things like the overhead myth and the nonprofit Hunger Games, and he, along with the video, has some great presentations about trying to do things in this kind of piecemeal way. So, Rochelle, are you going to run the PowerPoint? Okay. So that's where we're headed now. We sort of laid the groundwork for there's this organization AEA, and we're bringing together those voices from across our sector in our area in East King County. And so what we wanted to address were just some common challenges that cut across whether it's a small organization or it's a large organization. No matter whether you're serving babies or you're serving elders or you're working with people with disabilities, these are things that we encounter all the time. And I think the video is a fun way to sort of spotlight a lot of those things with some great metaphors there. So I'm going to talk about funding, and I am a fund development person. This is where I land a lot of times, but it isn't speaking just from that perspective. It is from all of the organizations and how it affects how we do things. And just like we often see that you mentioned that, we piece together funding in a lot of ways. So organizations come to our local cities and get funding for it, but you don't have enough money to cover every need. And so we'll spotlight, this is what we need from the cities. And then we're looking to the county, or maybe we look to the state. And then we're looking into private foundations and corporate foundations and individuals. And there's a lot of stitching that happens. And just like the woman at the end, where she wasn't going to return to get the pizza, doesn't want anyone to get dependent on you. That is something that I think organizations encounter on a regular basis. We go out, we put a lot of time into a proposal, and we get single year funding, and and it can be a big gap of time between the time you put the proposal together, when the funding comes in, and sometimes you're doing the report on it before you've hardly had a chance to get the funding used. So that makes it difficult. And obviously all of those things together create inequities in our system, and human services are a system. And you look at that puzzle that Rochelle showed earlier, we have all of these different parts, keeping them in balance, and then thinking of that within each organization and across the organizations, keeping all of those parts in balance does not usually happen. So you get inequitable funding, you get challenges to the ability to for service between large organizations, small organizations, an organization that somehow connects well with funding, or it may be just where they are, who they know, what happens on that. Um, so sometimes it's a real struggle to keep all of those programs funded, and that gets down to both the partial and the restricted. And one of the things, asking a pizza place to make falafel, that happens, and that can come restricted funding sometimes in trying to get the oven fixed. Organizations can be tempted into making falafels to do that. But it also, restricted funding can just simply be if you have one program that attracts donors, whatever kind of donors, um, whether they're looking for something that is new and different, the brightest shiny thing, or something that is a personal relationship to them. Restricted funding can put organizations out of balance. And once it's restricted, it can't be used to pay for maybe the program that is now in highest need, or to be able to cover staff or general operating costs. And you sometimes, it's that program that it's restricted for can become obsolete, or you lose other types of funding, or it's not meeting the needs of the people you serve any longer, but you're stuck because you've got money in a pot that you can't use. I think we've all heard the stories, about some of the universities, big universities that get these endowments. They've got huge amounts of money that they can't tap into, so they keep having to raise tuition for just operating funds because the money is so restricted. So we'll go to the next slide, talk about some more challenges, which I kind of alluded to already, and that's that programming mission drift that it comes from a lot of different ways. Sometimes it's just that you're an organization, you're tied to the community, a need emerges within the community, and there's no other place for it to go. So an organization will say, that's kind of related to what we're doing. And so they take it on. The more that they do that, the more they muddle their mission and what they're doing, then that can start to put stress on the entire organizational system, and create a lot of problems. And it happens with funding. That's the falafel question again. I think there's also a lot of things that happen in funding in across the organizations when we say we are a system, we are all human services, but we're not exactly the same. So what is needed to provide to make a food bank work is not going to be the same funding, the same support, or the same kind of things as an organization providing therapy for children. So it can be very different between HopeLink and what they need and what they're able to do, and a much smaller organization that Eastside Friends of Seniors. They have different missions. They're all human services. They're all very connected. We all weave together because we know that a lot of families need multiple services. A lot of individuals need those. But when it comes to funding, sometimes we're all put, and you guys do a great job. You try to put us in different categories, basic needs or children, and that helps a lot. That's really appreciated when you do that. But it's still, there's differences between them. So we end up comparing apples to oranges a lot of times. And sometimes there's a limited amount of funding that gets spread really thin. And so instead of helping a few, with a great amount of money. We help a lot with a little less, and sometimes that can be a real challenge. Another big challenge, and this comes down to that the little, big, and what organizations have in their capacity. And when you look at things like the funder application process and the follow through, that creates more inequity because of the difference in capacity between organizations. Rochelle, I think we're ready for the next one. So capacity and staff, capacity and resources. Staff is number one. I think I would say, speaking from my own point of view, asking for funding for staffing can cause a lot of issues with different, from individuals to different organizations. It's grouped into that, the overhead. And yet, frankly, staffing is the biggest cost for almost every human service organization. We have expertise, we have we're hiring people, highly capable people, highly educated people that are delivering services. I mean, when you look at education, mental health, disability care, you need people with a lot of training, and that is what the human services is. It isn't stuff, unless my organization's kind of stuff related, but not all of them are. And so that's one of those things. And not being able to have sufficient staff means it puts you into that dangerous loop. You know, you don't have enough staff, so you can't complete necessarily the right funding applications, or you can't get through them, or you can't provide the data that's needed. You don't get the funding, you can't keep the staff, and that's when those pieces of the puzzle start to fall apart within an organization. And a lot of times we think, oh, nonprofit, you can rely on volunteers. That's true, but it's not true for all organizations. And most organizations, even if they have volunteers, cannot use a large number of volunteers depending on what type of services they offer. Speaking, I'm going to put on my EBC hat for just a second here, and going in COVID, I mean, we have always relied extremely heavily on volunteers. 500 more volunteers every single month, thousands of hours every year, and we're operating now at about 30% of that number of volunteers, which has a real impact on our ability to meet our mission. And I know that other organizations like the food banks that have relied on those number of volunteers are going through the same kinds of situations right now during COVID. You know, we know that public dollars are, we understand where they come from. We know how much responsibility is to try to make them go as far as they can go and to take care of people. But sometimes, not necessarily with all the cities, but there are certainly a lot of public dollars that require so much accountability that we can have, that can cause a lot of problems for the smaller organizations. And then marketing, communications, it kind of comes all back to the staffing issue again. The organizations that have more staff are the organizations that can afford to send their staff to speak to human service commissions, to go to county or city council meetings, to attend Alliance of Eastside Agency pivot points, to connect with others, to help build partnerships, to help strengthen across sectors. But if you're working with all volunteers or with a very limited staff, you're not. So you're not in that marketing and making the connections. You don't make the partnerships. That again starts to threaten those organizations. But once we lose one organization in our community, it's puts strain on everybody else because we are all doing pieces of that puzzle. And people who are struggling, whether it's with poverty or with health issues, human service issues, often come in to the service sector through one organization, but are usually served by multiple organizations. So it does put a strain on the whole system there. Oh, I think we're to the next one. This is more on capacity and resources and just drilling down a little bit. And this is something I know you need, and we need it as well, is the ability to do our own evaluations, to do data collection. That's how we would be able to put together the scenarios, to do long range planning, to really innovate, is knowing what's going on out there. How are we affecting? Are our outcomes effective? What do we need to shift in an organization? How do we do that? The lack of funding sometimes for evaluation, for whether it's staff or whether it's computers or whether it's the software, can adversely affect our ability both internally but also externally in meeting the expectations of different funders and the accountability. It becomes a catch-22 situation for a lot of organizations. And it's also an opportunity. I'm going to jump just a tiny bit ahead and we'll come back to it. In that, by being able to get funding for some of these types of things, or having a sufficient staff or equipment to do that, also means that you're ending up strengthening the organization in the long run and helping to encourage innovation. I think to the next one. I think you're going to be super familiar with these, and probably we're not telling you anything new at all. Misconceptions. The East Side doesn't have needs. We've all heard it. We all know it. We all know that there are needs. And the other question is, why do people have needs? And so one of the things is constantly it's around education. It's overcoming those misconceptions, and then how do you help to educate the community and help the community understand what is happening to all members of the community and how to do that. We also, we're a growing area and we have changes in our population all the time. There's a lot of differences in where some changes happen. So you can say the Great East Side, what happens in North Bend is very different what happens in Bellevue. But we're all in the same boat. We're all here together, pulling. And so there's always challenges in trying to hear the voice of the community. Each community is different. Organizations are different, and who we're helping and trying to build across the education and help people see those misconceptions between what is going on in Kirkland and what is going on in Duval, and where we need to come in and help and build with each other. And I think that one of the things we often see is there becomes sometimes a little bit of a power differential between those big cities and the smaller cities, between the big organizations and the little organizations. That brings us all the way back to the Alliance of Eastside Agencies, because within our cradle, within our container, we help to level some of those inequities. We help build the partnerships that can mean that a small organization maybe be able to tap into some of the expertise from something like an organization like Hopley, that we make connections with business partners or other partners in the community, working with our cities to help strengthen all of those. Rochelle, I think that we had some things on innovation we wanted to talk about here. She had a great quote. I think she wanted to say about how within AEA we are able to building those partnerships, strengthening each other helps to make sure that we all have clear missions. We're all in the same swimming pool. We're in different lanes, but we're all in the same swimming pool, and we're working together toward it. And that encourages us to hear the voices of the community, to respond to the needs of the community, and to innovate to meet those needs. There's Rochelle, are you back on? Yeah.
Yeah, I need to find that quote. I apologize.
Oh, that's
It got
okay.
buried in my stuff.
I have it. If you, this was from the Nonprofit and Voluntary Sector Quarterly. That having a clear, motivating organizational mission helps an organization to focus attention on the innovations that will most likely support the accomplishment of the mission. Such a mission also creates a climate in which innovations are given a fair chance to succeed. As a result, firms with clear, motivating missions tend to be more innovative. And that is what we're trying to encourage within that container of the Alliance of Eastside Agencies, trying to strengthen across fostering partnerships and strengthening our entire sector across the human services, as well as with our partners like the cities, who I would just want to give a huge shout out that I've always been so impressed with the amount of support that all of our cities give and the amount of attention that is given to the needs of the residents in each city. That's the end of the PowerPoint. So we are open for questions now.
One thing I'd like to hear about, I thought that pizza thing was very cool, and it's kind of worth looking at a couple times because there are different dynamics going on there. But then within that, there's a sense of the agencies have a hard time when things are so directed, and yet the funders have this need for some type of direction or over direction in a way. And this might be what you guys are trying to take on, but what's that play there? What's driving that? It seems on some level there's an element of trust and shared experience that has to build up, because I need to tell people what has actually happened and I want to be more directive, but the more and more directive, the less it gives you to actually make an impact. And it seems like there's strains both ways, but what's going on there from your view, and how do you start to break through that?
Yeah, we understand that everyone wants to, we need accountability. I mean, you're not just going to throw money away without being able to do that. I think one thing is, I think that sometimes there's a disconnect in understanding how much expertise human service organizations have. That we have years of experience at doing things. We know what we're doing. We know that it works. Sometimes we can't show it. That gets to that capacity piece. So I think that, for when we're looking at how to fund those, acknowledging that the organization has a program in place, has the expertise to do it, it is a matter of trust. And then it may be a matter of saying, in order to keep that trust going, I'm going to give you a little bit more so you can afford to do some evaluation or data collection that supports me when I go back to my board or to my funders or to my bank, and know that I'm putting my money in the right place and it's being well used.
Yeah, I think absolutely. I think there is a power differential that is very apparent in that case. And I think what we've been seeing a little bit from some funders is more of a collaboration approach. It's not a let me tell you, even though that still happens, let me tell you what I need and I want falafel by Tuesday. There's also, there's one person at King County that I'm working with specifically where he doesn't live in rural King County, and I do serve rural King County, and he will just call me and say, what's going on about this? I hear about this. And it is a different relationship. It's the trust is there more because he is asking me. I can feel value that he does know that I have some unique expertise just from living and working in a community that he doesn't have that same direct experience. And it is changing the dynamics of how he supports the work that we do. And I've really valued, and I'm seeing it in other places too, but specifically this one that's coming to mind. You know, he's changed his RFP process based on feedback, right? He called me and said, hey, if I'm thinking about this, how would that impact? I mean, one specific example he asked about was, we need to vet organizations, he said. And he said, what if I require letters of support for every organization that applies for this funding? And I explained from our perspective is that, sure, we could get you letters of support, and it's another hoop, right? Is there another way to vet? Because at the same time, is it a really good vetting tool when I could probably call a couple friends, you know, from other organizations and do that. So it was fantastic to have that open, collaborative conversation. It didn't feel so, I have the money and I'm going to tell you what to do. And I think it was mutually beneficial.
And I do want to just add to that too. I think that the cities, actually, you all have demonstrated that during COVID. Our organization doesn't work specifically with Sammamish, but I think we all have relationships with different cities. And I know the cities got together and said, we're going to go ahead and have some flexibility in 2020. You can submit your invoices, and even if you did not serve the way that it was described in your contract, we've got some wiggle room. And that was huge, especially that, you know, the first quarter, the second quarter, where we were all trying to figure out how we were doing what we were doing. You kept the funds coming in. So that is an example of the relationship piece. And I think that, I think Rita used the term humanizing human services. So when it's actually seeing that relationship, it makes a difference.
Yeah, I would second that Sammamish, as well as the other local cities, actually most of them reached out and said, what do you need? How can we help? And have been, I know that they're working incredibly long hours because they're overtaxed too, all of the staff that are working as well as the commissions. And it's been great. It's actually, I think it's one of the silver linings. I think we have stronger relationships right now with some of our funders, and definitely both our county and city funders, than we have ever had. We're talking more openly, more honestly, and really building some of those partnerships that we sort of danced around sometimes in the past.
Thank you.
Any other questions about AEA, about what we said?
So I do have a question.
Great.
How difficult is it for a nonprofit to operate with primary source of funding from government or from cities because of the way invoices work? You have to perform the work, and then you submit your invoice, and then there's a lag time before you get money. So you have to have backup somewhere or more funds coming in from somewhere else so that accountability, you know, for man hours, woman hours, whatever you want to call. Is that a big difficulty? Is it a small workaround, or what are you seeing through the Alliance?
I think it's a really big challenge, and I thank you so much for pulling that out. This again that is part of that inequity thing between the sizes of organizations and the types of organizations, but cash flow is an ongoing challenge for every organization, and a lot of it is those things that you have obligations that have to be met every month, from, you know, rent, utilities, staffing, buying supplies, whatever it may be. And it is managing cash flow, I think, is probably the thing, whether it's your accounting department or your ED or in each program manager, is one of the hairier things that most human services nonprofits go through.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think some organizations use line of credit.
Yeah.
In addition to fundraising dollars and those kinds of things. My organization in particular has had to use a line of credit because of government funding that was on a school year calendar. So the summer months, we called it the trough. And during the summer months, we had to often rely on our line of credit to get us through, knowing that it was more of a timing issue. But we were really borrowing, right, to get us through, to keep staff working, because they still were providing services, but we only got paid during a school year months.
It's a mix, right? The puzzle that Rochelle had in that one slide. We make up for, we've got the contract side of things, but then we are doing auctions and fun runs and major gifts. And so that's the other side of the philanthropy piece. For my organization, I do all of that. I write the grants, I run a gala. And then you look at a year like this, and we had to really cut because we knew that we were not going to get the fundraising dollars. That was an area that we did have some difficulty in. So it's a puzzle every year.
It is. And the other piece to that is it goes to capacity, right? To staffing capacity. The accounting software that we might have, right? The staff at my organization and many others, we're lean when it comes to admin support.
Oh, yeah.
So it is, one finance person putting in all of the invoices, as well as doing accounts payable and payroll, and every little piece is an added piece to the puzzle, and it can be very challenging in terms of even the process, right? The admin process to make that happen, let alone the living within our means and cash flow.
I had one other question. You guys touched on this a little bit, and I know there's no magic answer on this one, but we often wrestle with what I would call kind of go narrow and deep versus kind of wide and shallow, sprinkle the money around. And there are best practices from human services funders that you've seen, how they think through that. I mean, we get to the point where, like, don't give somebody $500 or $1,000 just to talk a lower number, because it's just not worth it administratively. But we want to make an impact. But the real discipline would be to go with few organizations and go really deep, and then work with them to understand what the impact is and what their needs are. But then that leaves a lot out in the cold, like a lot. And how do people even think through that? I don't think we have a magic answer at all, but how do people think through that?
You have an unenviable task.
Yeah, that echoes my thought on that.
I think that I'll just go first, but yeah, I mean, I think that that's the dilemma every time. And I know for our organization, we recently were up for a grant with the county, and we thought that they were going to do more of a spread, and they chose to go deep with 3 organizations versus, lighter funding on all of them. And I think you have to come up with a philosophy that's going to work. And I don't think any of our organizations would fault you with having to make those decisions of either, going deep on a couple or spreading it out.
Yeah, I think, the approach the cities take by really trying to break down the funding into different kind of pots, and then going through and really evaluating. I look at every list, obviously I'm looking to see if we get funded, but I'm looking also to see how it's spread out. And it's pretty obvious how much thought is put into it, trying to hit the highest and most emergent needs and get as much as possible to all of those organizations. And unfortunately, I mean, that there just isn't enough money to go around. The
Right.
cities are struggling, and that's we appreciate all of the thought that goes into what you're doing.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I have a couple of questions. So one question I had was about the requirements that different cities have in terms of reporting. Do you see alignment in the requirements, or do they have like very different requirements? Because I mean, it goes back to the video, where like you are trying to meet the different demands of different funders. So that's one question. And the other question I had was about the whole issue of misconceptions that you talked about, that there's this misconception that the East Side does not have needs. And then on the other hand, you do not have funding to do evaluation, to track outcomes. So, I would assume that it's through the ongoing tracking that you can dispel some of these misconceptions. But if you don't have that funding, then how do you do it? And so I'm just curious to hear about your experience with the reporting, like both on the alignment piece between different cities, and then also like in terms of not having sufficient resources to dispel some of these misconceptions.
Great, good questions. So luckily, for the most of the East Side cities, not all of them, but for the majority of them, we do one single report, just like we do the one application for all of the cities that work together in the combined grant. That's actually that's really appreciated, because um, we we are able to put that all together and know exactly what has to get reported over the 2-year grant for that. There are other cities that have different requirements. A lot of them try to stay pretty closely to what the combined cities do, and so that is helpful in that we're not trying to do. If we had to try to do 20 cities, I mean, we'd all fry. Um, frankly. But we're also balancing those with county money, state money, some federal money, and then every every private and corporate foundation that you get funding from also has reporting requirements, and there's no alignment between those. So um, there are some that get a nice letter and they're happy with it, and we love them. And there's others that it it's like doing the application all over again. It's intense, and you're penalized if you're not able to provide the data of the outcome kind of data that that they want to see. There is definitely some shifting there, as Rochelle remarked. I think that there are some of those. When you look at like an organization like Philanthropy Northwest, they're really trying to encourage their members, those foundation members, to get a little looser on some of the requirements, to give a little bit. And COVID has really lit that fire. And so again, that might be a long range benefit out of what we're going through right now. The the collection of the data is like one there is some movement. We're an organization that receives Best Start for Kids funding through King County. And one of the changes that they made when they gave that funding was to insist that you needed to budget up to 10% of your award for evaluation. And then they are providing um, they provided people to help build an evaluation program, they're also providing other consultants to help build capacity. So it's got its issues, but in a lot of ways, they're doing some real changes to help really address the inequities in the capacity to be able to gather the data and report. It still continues to be a challenge. I represent an organization that is only now being able to talk about outcomes versus outputs. That kept the door closed to us for funding for many years, and it was because we just didn't have the ability to do that kind of measurement. And so I think that we're certainly not alone. There's a lot of other organizations that have been through that. Helene or Rochelle?
Yeah, the other piece that I'm thinking about in terms of data collection is that in an organization that has multiple programs and multiple funding sources, sometimes the funding source or funder requires a certain database. So from my organization, and I know many others, we are putting data into like 7 different databases. A lot of it the same information, but they pull it differently. They might ask a couple different questions. And we are working really hard to figure out a way to consolidate that information and automate it to make it quickly, but that takes time. That takes consultants because we don't have the expertise with in-house. So alignment is always a goal, not only for the reporting, but for the data collection. And because we have all these different entities and institutions saying, no, we want all you're required to use this. And I'm not exaggerating when I say we have 7 different databases that we have to provide information in. And it's a real challenge. The other piece is the misconception piece that I heard you ask about. Misconceptions, that, there is the community misconception that actually, since I've been working in East King County for, I don't know, 20, I'm looking at Helen, 25?
It's,
might
yeah,
be 30 years.
we go back a long ways.
A really long time, and it has always been the issue around misconceptions. And even when we have the data, we don't necessarily have the capacity to be out in the community, right? To convene people, to help educate. We do our best, but it's a piecemeal approach. It's just that piecing together, we piece together funding, we piece together marketing, we piece together communications. Those are pieces that, because we're so focused on delivering service, whatever that service is, those other pieces, while they are really important, they have to be afterthoughts, right? Because we don't have the funding, we don't have the support, we don't have the infrastructure to make them happen, including dispelling misconceptions.
Yeah.
Right. And that's one of the things that we as AEA, by pooling our resources, we try to address some of that education piece. But we're an all volunteer organization, so we're having to take our time from our own organizations to give to that. But we can pool, we can connect, we can make more partnerships. And I think continuing to really put emphasis on a coalition type of organization like Alliance of Eastside Agencies, that does allow for us to get to a little bit broader group of people to be able to share some of this information, to work on dispelling some of those misconceptions that are in the community.
So my last question is, this has been great, by the way, really, really helpful. And it might be like, come back and talk to us, again,
would
kind
love
of
it.
thing, is because we're very much on a journey ourselves, as we want to do the best we can, etc. If you were able to wave a wand and say all the funders that you are working with, whether it's in your individual experience or as part of AEA, they would do one thing over the coming year or 18 months or whatever, what might that be that would make your collective lives easier?
Great question.
Yes.
I'm just going to say if we had more funders that engaged, like even with what you're doing tonight, right, is creating a conversation. And I think, yeah, the conversation piece, having it be two ways. I think the phrase power differential came up earlier in the presentation, and it is, you know, it's super intimidating when every grant application you write hangs in the balance. And when it becomes more of a collaborative partnership and a conversation, doesn't mean we're going to get the money every time, but it allows us to learn how we can improve and enter into that dialogue. So that's my magic wand piece.
Cool. Thank you.
So I do have a question. You had indicated that you get together and have your meetings with all the group, and you were open to outsiders viewing. How do I get involved? How do I watch what's going on? I don't need to talk, but I just
Come on
just
in.
to see what's going on.
We'll add
Is
you to
there
the
a
mailing
link? Is
list.
there a schedule?
I can
I'm
forward
sorry.
all the meetings to you, the commission, the pivot point discussions, which are great. I know Joyce, you've attended some in the past, so I'm happy to forward those on to the commission as they come up.
Yeah,
Love to have
I
you there.
think that point discussion would benefit me not only as a commissioner, but maybe even carry over to the nonprofit I'm involved in.
We would love to have you.
The more information I can get, the smarter I get. Okay.
Well, it's
maybe.
a fun group of people. We'd love to have you be a part of it. Thank you for asking.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
And you certainly have hit upon so many of the things that I've lived through when I worked with the nonprofits for 35 years. And it hasn't really changed as far as the data reports, the requirements for the grant reports. I mean, those are killers to work on. And it takes either staff time or a phenomenal volunteer to really pull it out, because the program directors are overloaded as it is to try to provide the direct service, than to be able to pull the numbers together that makes the grant writer happy to be able to send it to the grant funder. Oh, thanks for
Yes.
advocating.
Yeah, for sure.
I've enjoyed the pivot meetings that I've attended.
Yeah, there's also a misconception of what we do, right?
Right.
I think we live in this world that to us is very, we understand, but it is complex, and it is different. It is unique from other sectors that I think, you know, the business sector. We often get those that are from the business sector that come in to provide some support, and we love that. And at the same time, they might say, well, if you just did, what's your business plan? And, you know, we have all of that stuff, but it's so complex. It isn't, I wish it were that simple, and it's not, right?
It's just not.
I do wonder, go ahead, sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Just building on that it's interesting. You have folks that are coming onto a commission, and many have experience in some way. A lot of times they've gone deeper and now they're on a commission. That's how they got on the commission. But the work of a commission as it relates to the agencies is something that has to be kind of learned and acquired. And we have a pretty veteran group here now, but we'll have new people that come on. And I'm wondering if, as a service, some of your information has been phenomenal, but if there was like a primer or tutorial that would be sponsored by you guys that could just be given to commissioners, it would get them up to speed faster, perhaps, in a common way. I don't know if you do that kind of thing, but it might be helpful so we all can start to think in a common language anyway.
It's actually one of our goals. So
it is one of our goals.
You're in the foundation of this, because I think we've talked about this for 3 years, to be able to say, how do we do a human services 101? And you're absolutely right. And in different conversations that I've had with commissioners in different cities, sometimes they have a great amount of knowledge, and some are really just starting out and they just want to do the right thing. They want to make a difference in their community, but they do need that information. So yeah, that's one of the things that our AEA group wants to be able to do. You bet.
Yeah. We'd
Yeah,
love to do it.
let me just
I
put my
really
two
want to go
cents
like
in.
this.
I had my video off because I still am sideways, but I'm sort of the new kid on the block as the newest commission member. And we go through our process of reviewing grants. We really start that in June, maybe May, June. It would be very helpful to have you come back right before we are starting our grants to refresh us on all of this because it has.
Good idea.
Yeah, we'd be
I
happy
agree.
to.
Sounds good.
I would think having you back before we start reviewing grants again, or even just getting together once in a while to share information, it would be helpful.
I think one of the things that we usually do in the pivot points and maybe one of the most valuable part of it is we always open up for discussion, whether we do breakouts into small groups and get feedback from the people within the groups or in a larger group, whatever the topic may be. And so by even coming to those a few times a year, I think you'd be able to hear that voice of the provider as they're addressing whatever is the issue or learning that we're doing at the pivot point. And it would help give more insight into what's going on at that ground level.
Mhm.
Hey,
I keep wanting to look sideways with
I know.
Terry.
it's very, very hard to.
That's why I put the video.
That's okay, Terry. We
Turn
don't
your
mind.
computer.
We don't
Something.
mind. We're good.
Alrighty. Well, thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments? Well, I would like to thank you. And I'm sure the whole commission would. It was very enlightening. I love the opportunity of being able to sit in and hear some of the issues that are going on with some of the nonprofits that are out there. I'm looking forward to that. I was telling Tom and Rita, next year I have more time on my hands because I'm going to go out of business. That's a good thing.
Okay.
All right.
I'm gonna semi-retire next year, so but still stay active on the commission and get more involved in the nonprofit. Is there anything else? I appreciate it. It was very enlightening.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Likewise.
I know that we thank you for this opportunity. Like Helene said, we've had this on our work plan to be connecting to providing some information as a broader perspective to human service commissions, to councils, those types of things. So you are actually giving us that push to do what we had been visioning and dreaming of
Cool.
for a very long time. So we appreciate that. And our next thing that we're planning right now, which we will invite, we'll give to Rita. Rita will send it to you, is a celebration. We don't have a date yet, but we usually do an annual luncheon that had to be canceled this year. But we are still awarding excellence in human services. And we'll be doing that either at the end of the year or the beginning of next year. So you'll be invited to that. We have some amazing examples of the great work that happens in East King County, and we'd love for you to join us for that. It'll be virtual, but we want you there.
Well, I'm gonna miss the lunch this year because last year was nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really.
Very enjoyable. Very enjoyable.
Someday
That's always
we'll
been one
get
of our
back.
high points of the year. It was a hard decision to give it up, but obviously we all had to do that. But we look forward to it coming back.
We will. We'll get better, and things are going to get cured and move on.
Well, thank you for all that you do. It's a lot of work, and people don't know all of the things that you have to do behind the scenes to make all of those decisions. And based on that application process, I know that you are wading through a ton of those and making some difficult decisions, and Rita's part in that. Boy, it's a lot of work, so thank you.
A lot of work.
And thank you for everything you guys are doing. You're doing great stuff, I can tell.
Thank you. Well, we love volunteers,
Yes.
and you are volunteers, and you're volunteering for the entire community and doing incredible work. So thank you very much, and thank you for allowing us to pilot our
Yeah, you did great. This was great.
our first time and try this, and we really appreciated the opportunity. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Have a great evening.
Thank
too.
you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thanks all.
So we're at the stage where we will get staff updates.
All right, so this is very high level. Hello everyone, by the way. I can't believe everyone started on time and Mike had to ping me. Like everyone was here on time today and I was trying to make a cup of tea, but anyway. So hi everyone. Let's see. So I think the big thing that we're seeing on the human services horizon is rental assistance. You know, we knew that there was going to be a rental tsunami and there was like a quiet November, but you know, we've been speaking with providers on a regular basis with regards to rental assistance, and they've just seen a massive uptick. You know, folks are very concerned about the moratorium ending at the end of the year and what that means, because there doesn't seem to be a game plan and no one seems to know what's going to happen. So, you know, people that owe rent are still going to owe rent on January the 1st. So we've been speaking with rental providers, and a lot of them have blown through the money that we've given them. And then we have Imagine Housing has Highland Gardens in Killarney, and they are actually in arrears of $87,000 for rents. What they did, Imagine Housing brought everyone up to speed on rent until August the 1st, and from August the 1st they are in arrears of $87,000, and that's impacting 39 households. So that's what's happening in one little pocket for low-income housing. And we are also, Tent City 4, they successfully moved. As you recall, Tent City 4 was at Mary Queen of Peace. And we had to wait for all the permits, and there's so many like hoops you have to jump through and dot your I's and, you know, cross your T's. And they had to, like, you know, they're now at Faith United Methodist Church, but they had to do lots of outreach to all the neighbors. And so they successfully moved, I think last weekend, I believe. And so they moved from American of Peace and they've moved to Faith United. And they are going to be there until they have a hard stop until March 31st, 2021. But they're all good. They're happy. We've checked in with the folks there, and they're all good and happy. And the community's been amazing and really stepping up, providing meals, etc. Also, we have a non-profit and small business funding that's currently open. It closes on November the 29th. And as it pertains to non-profits, it's offering funding for non-profits that are physically located in Sammamish and are registered 501c3s, and they have to show that they've sustained a 25% loss of income this year compared to last. So that really doesn't apply to a whole lot, but we're trying to do outreach as much as possible. But there are a few. There are a few.
Terry.
So,
Let's see. We're
It was warming
Oh,
up.
it took you an hour.
Yeah, the tubes had to warm up like the old TVs.
right. And then that's it. I mean, I think the next, I know Stan and Tom, we were talking in the pre-check-in as to what we were thinking of covering at the next meeting. Do you want to go through that?
I do.
Yeah,
do.
thank you.
So, is there on, have we had any of our service providers who have come back to us with maybe through the COVID grant system saying we need help?
Well, so here's the thing. You go to a provider and say, do you need more money? They're going to say yes.
I know, but have they came to us?
No, so we're in very close contact. I think the area that we're really closely monitoring, Stan, is rental assistance.
Okay.
That really seems to be the most critical at this moment. Yeah.
Which is the same
I
thing
asked
about the
because
community service issues now, because I
I'm
think of
sorry,
them as
Joyce.
rental assistance.
I'm sorry, Joyce.
What is the status now of St. Vincent de Paul and the Issaquah Community Service for rental?
St. Vincent de Paul, with their extra funding, they will get through that by the end of the year easily. And Issaquah Community Services, we give them such a small amount that they give like 10 times more than what we actually give them. And then Hope Link, we gave them some additional money that, remember, we had staff recommendations that could be used until June of next year. Hope Link have already gone through the rental assistance already. They're done. So there's definitely, and we're also speaking to Imagine Housing because that $87,000 is not going to go away. But they're also part of the King County Eviction Prevention and Rental Assistance Program. So it's really imperative for us to understand what that means for the residents, and they still can't give us an actual answer. So how does that impact our residents? And so being part of that program, is King County going to make them forgive? Is it going to have caveats, or are they going to? So we're trying to figure out where those gaps are. And yeah, so we're keeping an eye on that, but that's definitely where the most critical need is right now.
Is there any action with the Seattle Foundation?
Vis-a-vis, do they have more grants coming out? I don't know. Well, the thing is, you know how it is, Joyce. The St. Vincent de Paul's will never get a look in, and we've I mean, I will ask them to apply, but it's really the Hope Links of the world that, if anything, are going to be the ones that are going to be successful in that scenario. So yeah, so we're keeping an eye out. I mean, obviously, I know Issaquah Community Services, and I mean, St. Vincent de Paul is the only one that is exclusively in Sammamish, and Issaquah Community Services is obviously serving a much bigger area. But yeah, we're keeping a close eye on it.
Laurie lives in Sammamish.
I know, that's right.
Can
All
we
the
just
best,
say
all the
she's
best
working
people
from
live
home?
in Sammamish.
Just because the mail address is down there, I don't know.
Well, thank you, Rita. So before the meeting, Tom and Rita and Mike and I were discussing where we want to go next year and what we want to do and how we see our commission developing next year. So what we'd like to do is, if everybody could just make a list, doesn't have to be long, of things that you would like to see us achieve next year. Submit them to Mike and Rita maybe a week ahead of time before the meeting, which is December the 9th. If we get to them before that, we can share it with everybody, compare ideas, and kind of come up with an idea of where we want to go. Some of the ideas we talked about is revisiting the strategic plan, maybe doing deep dives in some of the needs assessment areas versus going broad. Those were just some of the ideas. Was there anything else, Tom, that you could think of that we had discussed?
What we were reflecting on was 2 years ago, we did a great job going deep with the panel discussions, and that was spurred by the needs assessment, where we said, let's learn from some experts, and we had really some very informed discussions, and we even added the thing about drug addiction as well. And so the question in my mind is, where do we want to spend our discernment time relative to learning and better understanding the needs in our community? We could either go deep in the needs assessment. For instance, for me, an area that we haven't spent that much time on is cultural inclusion. So what is it? We touched on it a little bit with fragility, et cetera, but what does that really mean in our community, and what could we do there? Um, Domestic violence is one where we dance around a little bit and there's not real proof, but there's anecdotally a weight around it's gotten worse. And what does that mean? If it's going to be on our needs assessment, maybe we should learn more about it and how it's assessed. Those are just two that come to mind. So the idea would be, let's have some dialogue about where we want to learn, what we want to do over the coming year, knowing that we're here to be of counsel to the council, right? So we don't want them to tell us what to do, but we do want to be on the front edge of human services for our community. That was kind of the way I thought about what we want to discuss. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So do we have a written down like strategic plan? We were going through that exercise. No, I'm just.
No.
We don't. Okay.
As a matter of fact,
yes and no.
We tried to get a written strategic plan through. There was some difficulty, and Tom and I, Rita, Mike, we discussed it. We'd like to improve it and discuss it as a group and proceed with it and see if council's going to pick up on it and approve it. Is that kind of the way we're going to do it?
Well, the additional color is, so we worked with Burke to come up with the needs assessment, and then stage 2, there was a strategic plan.
Yeah.
They had a very specific format for a strategic plan that weirdly had a ton of tactical options that you could pursue. And then they really got into also staffing, which we did not want to touch on. That hit a hiccup big time with the council. This goes back a year and a half or 2 years ago, where they put it on the sidelines and then they said it never really came to fruition in terms of a final vote. But then honestly, I've done a lot of strategic plans in my life, and the thing that Burke presented made sense from their view, but it's not a strategic plan like you might actually think of one fully. Strategy to me is just how you're going to use available resources and energy, and what does that look like? So it might be worth reading that and saying, here's what calls to me, here's why I wonder. A lot of us have experience in this area, and decide what we want to do. The only caution is I wouldn't want to put it out there as this thing that we're going to spend so much time on and then get caught up with council and their understanding of it, because it was put on pause because it seemed like it was going to take a lot of work to get it through council, and they just weren't ready for it. So I do think we need a plan. I mean, you know, in the absence of a plan. So Nishima, what are you thinking?
Yeah, so can you circulate that document around? Like, I remember the reason I asked about this was because some preliminary discussion started with Burks, and then I didn't hear anything about it. So I was wondering what's going on. And my concern is more, it's very similar to Tom's, that like I feel that in certain areas, we need more depth. We have to go deeper. So cultural inclusion is definitely one. From my perspective, domestic violence is another one. The way we have approached, especially cultural inclusion in the needs assessment, is I personally feel is at a much more superficial level. And all the discussions we have had over the last few months, reading the White Fragility book and the other conversations we've had, I mean, I'm sure that has given us a much more nuanced understanding of some of the cultural issues. And so maybe we should bring that understanding into that priority area.
I agree. And one of the things we discussed possibly doing is to look at other strategic plans that are out there from our neighboring cities and around the state, right, Rita?
Nebraska.
Rita gave me a hard time because I had done some research out of state. Anyway, look at their strategic plans, see what we can pick and choose out of theirs or how it's structured and get a good product that we can go to council with and get it through a lot easier. I mean, Burke's plan was good, but like Tom said, it had a lot of SKUs out there that created problems.
Yeah.
And I think we can eliminate those and clarify some issues.
But Rita, can you share the Burke's plan, like whatever they have put together? Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Another thing that we discussed, we're going to do a year in review at the next meeting, where we are, where we're going. One thing that maybe we take into consideration is either a semi-annual report or an annual report to council with some human interest stories on how our grants or our service providers, the money that the city's provided out there, has improved people's lives, saved people's lives, corrected things, mental health counseling, whatever. Just to add a human interest face along with the numbers, because numbers can be boring. See, like Rita's bored right now. Yes,
So
we
bored
saw
she
it.
muted herself.
Yes, we saw it.
I am
Is there-
so sorry. I
It's
looked at
quite
my
all right.
husband.
I'm sorry.
And that's why I yawned.
I am sorry.
He's
I'm
looking
sorry.
at the side
I'm
of my
s-
eye. And
I'm sorry. I'm so boring.
no.
Well, anyway, next
Nishita, I'm
meeting
even
we'll-
thinking about, in your experience, how you see folks play back to you the successes or results they've had. People learn in different ways, and so you want the numerics, but it might be interesting just from your experience as we talk about this going forward, what really seems to work in terms of sparking people to tell the human side of the story. And you have to respect confidentiality and all that stuff, right? But I feel like we need to advocate. I guess what came out of this was we need to advocate for our own successes. I think the council supports the commission, but it'd be cool to be able to feed back to them things that, they would want to hear about the successes we've had, that kind of thing.
Was that a question, Tom?
Oh, no, I was just suggesting that specifically, Nishina, I'm sure you see a lot with the grants that you work on and stuff like that. So any insights you have would be very welcome as well.
So one thing, and that the group that spoke with us today, I think they are in a position to actually do some advocacy, because it's a network of member organizations that they work with. So they are really in a position to, if they are trying to get funding from a multi-funder collaborative, they can really make a case for having, similar reporting templates, similar guidelines, etc. So sometimes, like, partners have to do some advocacy. So I've been part of multi-funder collaboratives where the partner or a number of partners who received funding, they reached out to us and said, it would be great if all of your reporting requirements were streamlined, and we just had to complete, like, one set of proposal, budget documents, etc. Would that be acceptable to you, rather than submitting one for Gates, another for the Hewlett Foundation, another for some other organization? So we have come to agreements, when partners have asked us, so they have to ask. I mean, once they've asked us, like, we completely agreed, we decided that, okay, they can use the Hewlett Foundation template. They don't have to complete the Gates Foundation templates. And, so we have done things like that. But I do feel like, to a certain extent, partners have to drive that, um, or at least let the funders know that it can be very challenging to meet different types of requirements.
Right. Makes sense. Makes sense. Cool.
All right, so our next meeting will be on the 9th. Bring your ideas as far as what you would like to see the commission do next year. We need to pressure Tom to decide to rejoin us.
Thank you. You guys are very gracious. I appreciate it.
Well,
I mean, discernment.
you'll probably get a daily email reminder.
And thank you. I've gotten a couple emails. It's very touching. I really have to say.
Yeah, we want you back.
Yes.
Rita, have we had applications yet?
Thank you.
That's a great question. I don't think we have anything. Mike, have you heard anything? I don't believe so, but the deadline's not for a while yet. So
I've seen it advertised. I don't know
sure. And I'm trying to and I make yes, advertise far and wide, and then I'm making sure that I'm trying to distribute it to all the non-profit networks and just all the other sort of community groups as well. So we get a big, wide range of folks applying.
And I put it into the Nursing Network.
Mike, have you seen anything? Mike's asleep.
He's been working very hard. I know that.
Sorry. I was looking at something else. I missed it.
Mike, you deserve to be asleep with all those council meetings, buddy.
Yeah, you've been going crazy, man.
Oh my goodness. So we'll find out. We're not sure about how many, but what tends to happen is people tend to, in late November, start applying and submitting their applications. So we'll do another push out for that as well.
Okay, great. Is there anything else?
I don't think so.
Everybody happy?
No, I hope I can hear you all. You can't see me, but I'm here.
It's okay. Thanks, Jerry.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody.
right.
I'll take a motion to adjourn since we finished business.
Let's adjourn.
Fabulous. Have a lovely evening, everyone.
Thank
you guys.
you.
Take care. Thank you.
We are adjourned. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Good night,
too.
all.
Bye, guys.
Bye.